So this tutorial is about using a function called accessibility analysis, which is right here. And this is to check if any of the tools that you use, for example, if you're using like CNC mill for producing your part, would the tool be able to approach the part as it is? Or if you are creating a part for injection molding, then would it be able to be removed if you're using, for example, like 2 parts mold or 3 parts mold, checking if there's any undercuts. So while the explanation or description seems wordy, it's better to look at the example of what it really means. And in the inspection section, you can choose accessibility analysis. So if we click a body that we want to do the analysis on and choose the direction, in this case, say if we are dealing with the toolpath that's generated on the y-axis, so click the y-axis and stay here for like 2 or 3 seconds, which shows the list of faces, edges that is within the line of this click, and we'll choose Y. Instantly, you will see that it turned its color to either green or red. And what it really means is that if you use tool from one above, so for example, if we have a tool like an end mill that is in, I'm just going to quickly draw for example, like a drill bits example. So if we have a drill bit that looks like this, that moves from this direction and then try to mill something on the plano side, what you will see is if we do inspect and do the accessibility analysis, it means that this green part is able to be approached from the top side and this red cannot be approached from the top. And you can actually change this direction, just saying direction 2. And this means that whatever that's up there could be accessed using some of the tools. However, if you are building something up here, then anything below cannot be, for example, like CNC milled, or if you're using like 2 parts cavity mold, then the part below cannot be fabricated using the part only by using one single part. So while it sounded a little bit difficult to understand what it means with this example, because keycap, it seems like it already has good accessibility from the top and the bottom. So I actually use different example in this case, which is the crown, the fidget toy that I showed as an example in class. And you'll notice that if you do the analysis with this specific part, so for example, accessibility analysis on this crown and set the direction as y-axis, you'll notice that even though we changed the direction, since the top part can be approached using single mold, but if we change the direction, you'll still recognize that this specific part inside here cannot be approached either from the top part and the bottom part. So what it really means is that if you are creating, for example, like a 2-part mold with top and the bottom mold that looks like this, and I'm going to actually move it around. So in the section views, it actually looks like this. And in the mold example, if you're using like injection molding, you'll move the top part, which actually can be removed without any difficulties because it has all the drafts. However, if you're trying to move out or remove the bottom mold after injection molding, you'll notice that it hits this big chunk of the piece has an undercut so that it blocks the mold from moving away, because there's a huge chunk part here that was marked as red when we were doing the accessibility analysis. So in this case, what we want is probably 3 parts mold. So probably same top part mold. However, we might want something that has the another part that can actually produce the undercut. So remove this part like this first, move out. like a pin. And then if you move out the bottom part, then there becomes no problem in removing this mold. So the accessibility analysis is basically checking that, because if you turn on the accessibility analysis again, and if I set the direction on this blue Z axis, you'll notice that in this direction, all of this area can be reached out. So that's one option. So this part inherently needs basically 3 parts mold, which will increase the manufacturability costs. So it might be better to improve this design for injection molding to remove the part or mold needed to produce this part, because for this single part you need 3 parts mold, or you can use different sort of manufacturing techniques such as additive manufacturing. And for example, if we are producing this part, then it is highly likely that it might be able to be created using 2 parts mold. So if you do the accessibility analysis again, and if you set the Y direction here, you'll notice that this part, even though it might have a little bit rough surface, if you change the direction, all the surfaces are still quite approachable, as you can see from here. While we need to work on something like a draft and also parting line, however, you can see that still we can produce this part using 2 parts mold, so which will be good candidate for injection molding. And this is just to demonstrate on how we can actually utilize this accessibility analysis, especially checking if there's any undercut, and we have to either create our specific mold, or we can just change the design so that we don't need to have any undercuts in the design.